Hello and welcome to the Dragons Lair podcast, your home of all things Dragons RFC and rugby in the region. I'm Jamie, and joining me as always is my co-host Gavin Thomas. How are we, Gav?
Yes, I'm very well, thank you, Jamie. Evenings hasn't thrown me completely. I've still remembered the key facts. Dragons aren't very good, and we haven't won for a while.
Yep, that's all you need to know, really. Unfortunately, that's where we are, isn't it? So you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and the Sports Social Network. And we have another special guest with us tonight, Gav. So anyone who follows him on X, formerly known as Twitter, will be aware of his very informative and fun threads. He recently did a thread on comparing rugby coverage to Strictly Come Dancing, which I'm not going to lie was my personal favourite because I love rugby and I love Strictly. So he combined the two worlds wonderfully there. He has provided analysis to multiple clubs in the UK and abroad, and has also coached at youth and senior levels. And he's here tonight to help us preview the Dragons versus Oyonnax game this weekend. So, without further ado, welcome to the pod, Sam Larner. How are we, Sam?
Oh, very well. Thank you, Jamie. That was a lovely intro. Thank you very much.
I had that prepared a couple of days ago, so I hope that's okay for you. I wanted to give
Perfect.
you a big intro, Sam.
Yeah, it's set the expectations too high, if anything, but thank you very much.
No, we're delighted to have you with us. Someone who actually knows what they're talking about, Gav, isn't it? That'd be quite nice.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And also a man who did the cup draws for the Sussex RFU Cups this season as well. So he's a man of many talents.
Yeah, I loved doing the cup draw. It's the I fell just short of getting an actual velvet bag, but aside from that, it was what I was aiming for.
Lovely stuff. Okay, then, so let's get into it. Now, before we do talk about the Dragons Oyonnax preview, I just want to mention a bit of news, a bit of sad news that happened this week. So, former Dragons captain Andrew Coombs has revealed he's been diagnosed with dementia and probable CTE at the age of just 39. Coombs is one of 295 retired rugby union players who have brought a legal claim against three of the sport's governing bodies, alleging they sustained brain injuries during their careers. The former Dragons back row, or lock, I should say, who won the Six Nations with Wales in 2013, issued a lengthy statement on social media. I'm not going to read all the statement because it is available for anyone who wants to read it. But he did say that whilst I am devastated by my diagnosis, my spirit remains strong. And in a strange way, the diagnosis has brought relief and clarity as it has provided answers to many of my questions. I'm trying to be myself as much as possible, enjoying life to the fullest, not allowing my condition to destroy my mental health. So, yeah, pretty devastating diagnosis there. We do send Andrew and his family his best wishes from the pod. It's really sad news. And I'd just like to get your thoughts on that, Sam, and, you know, the legal case that's going on. It's really building. There are a lot of players now coming forward. What do you make of it all?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly sad when you hear something like that from Andrew and obviously from a number of players. You know, Steve Thompson probably the one who's been involved in this for the longest, maybe. It's always incredibly sad when you see it on that personal level. I think as well a different issue, but you know, there's a discussion about whether there's a possible link there with Kevin Sinfield longing for motor neurone as well. You kind of forget that a lot of this stuff is part of the game now, really, which is incredibly sad. And I think that, you know, whether you agree with the legal case or not, and I think on balance, I would. One of the things that you probably have to admit is that while it may be that back when, you know, Gav started playing, which I think was just before Webb Ellis picked up the ball, but back then, you know, whilst you may have accepted that you were going into a game where you could have got injuries, you could have got concussion, you could have got broken bones and that kind of thing. I think the idea that you knew that you were going to get, or that there was a chance you could get a, you know, dementia diagnosis before 40, I think no one can claim that you knew the risks of that happening.
You know, realistically, if you knew that, people wouldn't do it, would they?
Yeah.
You know, it's if we were told there is a fair chance you will develop early onset dementia and significant brain injuries, people would think seriously about it. You know, particularly considering how poorly paid it is in comparison to other sports.
Yeah, absolutely. I
Yeah.
wonder whether that's going to see a bit of a talent draining away, because there's certain things that we are doing better now, lower tackles. I think fewer or less contact. There was a big discussion about this when I first started getting involved in rugby lighting, kind of in, I guess, 2012 or so, was people saying that it's not possible to do less contact in training because the players just won't be prepared. I think what you'll see now is clubs doing very little contact during the week, or very little, I guess, bone on bone contact, maybe some light, wrestling or hitting bags or that kind of thing. And so there's certain changes being made, and I think it is safer than it was when Coombs first started playing. But it's still a dangerous sport, and I do think if you were a parent, you'd certainly be thinking twice about whether you wanted your kids involved.
My youngest plays, and there is always that fear where when you go out and you play rugby, and I still play as well, and there is always that fear that you're going to come away with something really quite significant.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we've always accepted that, haven't we? To a point, we've always accepted that there's a risk that you can break a leg. If you play enough rugby, even if it's just 5 or 6 games, you'll have played with someone who's done something like that. Twisting ankle, broken ankle, done something to the finger, that kind of thing. But yeah, realistically, the idea of serious long-term brain injury was not brought up. Certainly when I first started playing.
Yeah. And I don't think it was ever treated seriously either, which is the other issue. I'm lucky. I've generally played for clubs that actually take a level of care over it. But I speak to other people who have been, I'll be fine, just get yourself back on.
Yeah.
And don't really know what's going on, have seriously concussed themselves.
Yeah, and that's still the same now. I played a couple of years ago against a team. Someone got concussed. I didn't see it, but I was told it happened for them. They either claim not to have seen it or actually genuinely didn't see it. And he was back playing, and we basically said, look, you have to take him off because one of our players or a couple of our players are seeing him get knocked out. And eventually they did, but they probably let him play for a good 15 minutes before they did that. And I don't think that's uncommon. I think that's probably fairly standard.
No, and I think the lower you go down the tiers, the more standard it becomes, really, as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had Adam Hughes on a couple of weeks ago, didn't we, Gavin? We spoke in depth about this because he had to retire from the game at the age of 28. And it's just very, very sad. Coombs is not the first, and unfortunately, he's not going to be the last. We're going to see more of this, unfortunately.
But you see the names that's on that list: Gavin Henson, Colin Jarvis, Harry Ellis. International rugby players just saying, I think this has seriously affected my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very sad. So, as I said, we wish Andrew Coombs and his family all the very best for that. Okay, so we're heading into Europe now this weekend. The first block of the URC is done. Dragons are bottom of the league, thanks to the Scarlets winning at Cardiff. Sam, I know you're happy about that, but I'm not, to be quite honest with you. Just want to get your thoughts about the Welsh regions as a whole. What have you made of their performances in this tricky first block? What are the takeaways from you?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one, really, because obviously I'm a Scarlets fan, so I was happy that we beat Cardiff. However, had we not beaten Cardiff, then you look at the table and you go, actually, Cardiff are looking a decent side, potentially pushing to the playoffs. Where there's the kind of the dogfight that's happening in the Welsh regions means that we're all kind of pulling each other down, really. And so there's unless something seriously different changes, it looks like any of us could beat any of the other regions, and maybe Zebra and Sharks, and possibly a few others if they have a bad day. But because of that, you're going to struggle to have one team pull away. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. I genuinely would think, although I'm a Scarlets fan, every other Welsh region would probably be my second team, really. And so I like the idea of a Welsh region doing well. Yeah, ideally it would be the Scarlets, but I think on balance it's probably more likely to be Cardiff this year. But it's not. I don't think it's going to happen really, because there's the main competition is between the Welsh legions and a couple of other sides. So I think it has been disappointing. I think there's some reason to be optimistic. I think performances have improved since the World Cup players have come back. I think as well, there's a few injuries, during the rounds. I mean, the Dragons have obviously been hit. The Scarlets did their South Africa tour at the start of the year. Dragons obviously have just done theirs. So those are games that realistically there was never going to be any hope of winning. I think what will be frustrating for the Dragons is that, one try away from coming away with that with at least a point, which might have happened, which might have helped. So I've been, obviously from a Scarlets perspective, I've been really impressed with Johan Lloyd. I think it was really impressive. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Sam Costello comes back, and what he ends up doing. I think from a Dragons perspective, so Bradley Roberts has been really impressive for me. I think possibly he was it's quite an interesting career trajectory from him, because he was the hooker that no one really knew about when he was brought into the Welsh setup. And now he's in Wales, and perhaps he's back under the radar again, and he could find himself back.
I think with Roberts, he found himself tarred with that brush when Wayne Pivac was selecting anyone.
Yeah,
that's anyone. Sam Wainwright is a great example. Just randomly picking names out of a hat.
Yes.
But and I've always been anti Bradley Roberts, but I agree with you. I think he's been one of our stronger players this season so far.
Yeah, and interesting on him, he is made the third most tackles of any hooker in the URC this year, and a high tackle success rate, 90%. He's good at his gain line success. He's made 21 carries successfully over the gain line, so he looks a bit more like that complete hooker that we're starting to see. The kind of the Tom Stewart, the Johnny Matthews. I mean, they're perhaps slightly more superstar, but he's starting to develop those other parts to his game, I think. And so I would certainly, I expect to see him in the conversation for Wales come the Six Nations.
Hooker is a tricky position, though, isn't it? Because you've got Dewey Lake, you have Ryan Elias, you have Elliot Dee, you have Bradley Roberts, you have Sam Parry. There's lots of players there.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's a hard one to differentiate yourself from anyone else. So the first thing you got to do is hit your lineouts. But as we probably all know, it's not as easy as the person who has 90% is necessarily the best. It might be that their lineout caller's doing them a favor. It might be that they're throwing to the front of the lineout all the time, which isn't a particularly good attacking opportunity. So that's the kind of thing that I think often gets lost, really. The idea that it's not always the case that the best lineout success is necessarily the best lineout. But I do think that if you chuck all of those players into a hat, and if you look at someone like Ryan Elias, I thought it was very impressive on his debut, or not debut, his first of the season, or first game back of the season 2 weeks ago. I forget who that was against. Ospreys, maybe, when Scarlets were well beaten, but I thought he was very impressive. And so I think that he maybe is a standout, but really I don't think there's a huge amount between anyone there. And it'd be interesting to see who else gets picked from the Dragons. I think Leo Dyer's fairly well in there, I think. But then there's someone like Matthew Screech who's been in the conversation for seemingly 50 years, and has never really made the breakthrough. I wonder whether he might have a shot. And then Alan Wainwright looks like a complete player, really.
Yeah, in terms of the Dragons players, then you're talking about Bradley Roberts' stats. How does he compare generally to the other Welsh hookers?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So if we have a look at this, so I think he's going to be at the top in terms of tackling. He actually no, so Liam Belcher's at the top, who I would say probably is not in the running for Wales,
No.
really. If we look at line outflows, so he's lost 12 of 79, which is not great.
No.
It's not terrible. Compare that though to someone like Elliot D, 1 of 13, and Ryan Elias, 7 of 34. He's lost. So compared to them, it's not terrible. The others haven't played a huge amount, so I think one of the things that Bradley Roberts will probably have to work on is either he turns himself into a turnover machine, or he turns himself into a proper ball carrier. He's done well in terms. He's got 3 offloads this year, which is more than anyone else. He's got more contact meters than any of the other hookers, and he's got more meters made than any of the other hookers. So he's looking more like being one of those kind of back row come hooker types who can carry a fair amount. So I think it'd be interesting to see him giving a go. I think he's a better player than he was when he was selected a few years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. So a big thing that said lots of Dragons fans saying we've had on the pod is, why do they kick it so bloody much? So what is the value of kicking it so bloody much, Sam?
Yes, well, it's a very interesting point because one of the things you'll see is that, and I think in fact Eddie Jones put this probably better than anyone has in Japan's playbook back in when he started. I think that was 2013 maybe. So there's a line in Japan's playbook that just says, we want to keep the ball in hand, but if we don't kick it, we attack a 15-man defensive line. And I do just think you could put that on a t-shirt and just copy and paste that to Jonathan Davis every time he bangs on about it on BBC. The fact is you have to kick, otherwise you just lung at a brick wall. You see someone like Exeter when they played, was it Toulouse in Europe in the quarterfinals or semi-finals last year? Whoever it was they got well beaten and they kicked something like 8 times, and you saw that they weren't particularly exciting. They were just lunging at a French wall that wasn't letting them through. And so you have to kick, otherwise you just defend, otherwise you just lung against 15 men. But also, there's very little value to having the ball in your own half. So something like possession has no bearing on overall success. What does matter is getting 22 entries and stopping your opponent from getting 22 entries. So if you're just overplaying in your own half, which the Scarlets have definitely been guilty of, and Scotland and Italy hugely guilty of in the World Cup, what you end up with is a ton of possession and absolutely nothing for it. And as soon as you turn it over, you're more likely to give away penalties and kicks at goal.
Yeah. And it's the weather as well, isn't it? Sometimes the weather doesn't allow a free-flowing, expansive, attacking. Sometimes it's better to kick for territory and release that pressure. And, I know we've had this conversation so many times, Gavin, we on the pod. Yeah. We always get Dragons fans say, we kick it too much. Why do we kick it? But I've always said, kicking is not the issue. It's the execution of it. If we kick well and we play a very good territorial game, it works very, very well. And you see, All Blacks and Springboks and France, they all kick a lot of ball away. But the problem with us is sometimes, a lot of the time, we don't kick well. It's the execution is the problem.
And with somebody like Rio Dyer, who's one of the best kick chasers in the game for me currently.
Yeah.
We should be kicking, get him underneath the ball and force the defence to deal with it.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a really interesting one because I'm looking at playing style at the moment, and one of the elements of that is the percentage of a team's total meters that come from carries. So I think the average is about 35%. The Dragons are at 28%, which is the third lowest in the URC. Now, they're not in particularly good company down there. So you've got the Ospreys also at 28% and Zebra at 26%. But the third team on 28% are Benetton, who are having one of probably their best ever season. And a lot of that is they've gone incredibly pragmatic, and they've chosen basically to kick anything away that where there's no value to keeping hold of possession. And so I think there's a lot to be said for kicking, getting rid of the pressure. There's no point in putting that pressure on yourself. And I guess just for kind of completeness, the Dragons last year made a kind of dalliance away from being a very pragmatic team. They were about average in terms of their attack. This year, they've reverted to how they were in 2021 to 2022. So what it looks like is that Dye kind of gave them a slight nudging, a bit more of an aggressive attacking way last year. Realised it hasn't worked and has nudged them back towards a bit more of a pragmatic kick it away team, which you could argue also hasn't worked. But yeah, it's clear that there is some changes being made there.
What is the style for the Dragons? What style suits us, Because we try to go too attacking like we do at the minute, we make a lot of errors, which I'm going to ask you about later. And we can't play a power game because we haven't got the forwards to do that. So it's really hard to know. Because to me, at the moment, what Dragons are trying to do is what Pat Lam was doing in Bristol sort of 2-3 years ago. Very high tempo attacking game. The problem is I don't think the Dragons have got a skill set to carry off that game plan, and they're making a lot of errors. But let's speak about that now, because I've been thinking about this a lot now for the past couple of days, where the Dragons are making errors every single game this season, even against the Ospreys. We beat the Ospreys, but they were down to 13, and we made hard work of that. We keep making basic errors every game, knocking the ball on, looking for the miracle pass, poor discipline, being really poor in. Dave Flanagan's talked about accuracy a lot this season, and he did so after the Lions game. We're not accurate. We need to improve our accuracy in the red zone and all this. When a team keeps making the same errors game after game, what is that down to, do you think? So is it the players? Is it the coaching? Or is it a bit of both? I understand this is a nuanced question. There's no easy answer. But what do you think it is when a team keeps making the same errors week in, week out?
Yes, I do think it's probably a combination of a few things. I think I forget who it was. It might be a football manager actually. Someone on the weekend basically said that the issue is that it was Dan McFarland at Ulster. He said that the attention to detail in training isn't good enough, and so I think that's a big part of it. It's what you walk past. So I think what will be tempting at a team like Dragons and Zebra, where you don't have the quality, is to go, that's close enough. Like that'll do that standard. And so it's easy to then walk past it and go, that's fine. Like we'll move on to something else. And then in a game, you get the additional pressure brought on you. And that's when you realize that the standards you set in training are too low and that you're making mistakes. I think one of the, we talked about kicking. One of the issues you've got is that you can't solve everything. So you can't solve handling one week and then the line out the next week and then the scrum the week after, because these things just take too long. And also it's often it's the requirement of just making players a lot better, which is not an overnight thing. And so I think what they will have to do is either, I guess you can do two things. Either you just pull back the game plan, which it seems like they kind of have done to a certain extent, and say, look, we're just going to kick. We're not going to put ourselves under huge pressure anywhere in our half. We're just going to kick the ball away. And what our focus is going to be on the defense and taking the ball, stealing the ball and creating opportunities that way. Or you say, look, let's just go wild. Let's go kind of barbarian style, swing the ball around, no care about the consequences. We'll have fun and maybe we'll pick up a few wins. And I think you have to go one of those two ways. What you probably can't do is go, let's play like Leinster or let's play that style, because I just don't think it's going to work. But I think partly it's the players. I think that if you look at the Dragons team, and it's sad really, because there is talent in there. There's individual players of talent. We've obviously talked about Bradley Roberts, Alan Wainwright. Rodri Williams has been really good this year. But you look at those players and you go, they are talented, but across the board, is there the 23 who would make many other teams? If you did a 15v15 and worked out who would be in the combined 15, I don't think there are many. And so, and to be honest, that's been a long running Dragons issue, is having that consistency across the board. And so I think it's probably a little bit of both, really. Probably a little bit of coaches letting stuff slide and a little bit of players just not being up to standards. Yeah,
no, that's fair enough. It's interesting you mentioned the training there. I don't know if you follow the Dragons on X and social media. They put out a lot of videos of them training compared to other clubs. And it's almost like they're saying, look, we're not winning games, but look how hard we're training.
Yeah.
I mean, for me personally, I think it's really dull content seeing, Ollie Griffiths punt by and Joe Davis running into tackle bags. To me, I don't find that interesting content. But to me, well, to my, an expert opinion, it looks like they're working hard in training. And Dave Flanagan has talked about, we've prepared well. And, look how well he was talking about Dan Lydiard and Brodie Coughlin. Apparently, they're really scrapping in training. He's talking about intensity. But it doesn't translate onto the field.
Yeah.
When you see him work hard on training. So it's strange, isn't it? You're just mentioning the training there. Maybe they're not training hard enough, but then, to me, it looks like they are training. I don't know.
I think Sam's hit the nail on the head. I think some of it is not good, but good enough. And that's the way they're focusing on. And a lot of the basic errors that are happening are because they aren't focusing enough on just getting those basics right. It's, I'll be fine, I'll be fine, I'll be fine. But just the way they set up in defence of rucks, just the way they set them in defence of kicks, the way they react to counter-attacks, none of that's good enough. And that's why we're in the position we're in.
Yeah. I think that's ultimately it, isn't it, really, is that the decider of what's good enough is what happens on the pitch. And as soon as you're, when you've won one game out of seven, is it?
Yeah, 6 or 7,
yeah.
107,
when you've done that, there's not really the team. I think we probably agree is not at the standard of the teams who will be in the playoffs.
No,
but I also think it'd be hard to just say that it's significantly worse than Zebra, than Cardiff, than Scarlets, than Ospreys. You could make the case that just on paper the Dragons could finish anywhere between like 7th and 16th or 9th and 16th, and realistically they're going to finish
16th.
Yeah, potentially. So I think that there's clearly a lack of something's not happening in training. And it's probably not that they're not working hard enough. It may be that they're not working on the right things, or it may be that they're walking by stuff that is not good enough, and they're going, that'll do.
The methods, isn't it? You're talking about training methods, perhaps. Okay.
Yeah.
One of the comments I constantly get on social media and speaking to friends and family where we have a chat about the Dragons, they always say to me, well, I don't understand it. We got the team on paper. Mm-hmm. Honestly, if I had a quid for every time I heard somebody say, "Oh, we got a good team on paper," but of course it just doesn't translate. And the problem is we do have a lot of injuries at the moment. We have got 16 players out. We've always had a paper-thin squad. We've always operated on low budget. So you start taking key individuals out of that team, and all of a sudden you are left with, I'm not going to name the players, obviously, but you're left with what me and Gav has described as Welsh Premiership standard players.
Yeah.
Gav, would you agree with that?
Oh, no, absolutely. That's our problem. Once you get beyond our first 20, you are into guys who would be very good Premiership players.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a good thing here is that the Dragons this year alone have used 40 players, who have played at least some minutes, and most of them have played at least kind of 20 minutes. 40 players in 7 matches is concerning, because that Dragons team, it is the kind of one that I think we probably always felt this about teams like Bristol, maybe, that if you put the best 15 out, they should beat everyone. And I don't think that's quite true of the Dragons, but if you put the best 15 out, very talented. Yeah.
You can be competitive,
But by the time we get into the 40th player, that, as you say, that is Premiership level, and Welsh Premiership level than English Premiership level, and I think that's the big issue. A team like Leinster, their 40th player probably would improve the Dragons, and I think that's probably quite a damning indictment, really.
Well, you look at Leinster, and they've got 20 odd guys in the Ireland squad.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've got 20 odd guys who are good enough to play in the URC. Never mind playing the national rugby.
Yeah.
But before the season started, when people started making their predictions, Dragons were tipped by a lot of people, a lot of pundits, to have a relatively decent season, only because if you looked at what happened at the other 3 teams, they had to make massive cuts to their playing budget, whereas Dragons always operated on a smaller budget, so we didn't have to, cut our squad as drastically. We didn't have the chaos of a team like Cardiff, for example. Now, if you look back on Cardiff a few months ago, they hardly had any coaches. they hardly had any players. And yet I think there's some green shoots there, and they're having a decent season. And, they could have and probably should have won more games than they have. But then you look at the Dragons, we haven't had the chaos of other teams, so we haven't had to make those cuts, as I said. And yet we're bottom of the table. And I think that's really disappointing for me.
The one bit of good news I would say is that if you look at the teams that the Dragons have played, Edinburgh, Munster, Leinster, Sharks away, Lions away, and the Cardiff and Ospreys. So beat
Ospreys.
Ospreys.
Yeah. Narrowly lost to Cardiff, but Edinburgh, Munster, Leinster, Sharks, and Lions. I think no one probably would have expected the Dragons to win those. The crucial one though is going to be the after Europe. So Cardiff away, Scarlets at home, Zebra away, Sharks at home. I think if you don't get wins against 2 or 3 of those, I think it's going to be a very long season. But I think that's going to be basically the moment, really. That's going to be that kind of December, January. Ironically, probably not ironic isn't the right word, but that's probably going to be the time where kicking and getting the ball away from your own hands is going to be most beneficial. So I wouldn't yet write off the season. It has been a very hard start, but it's a little bit like the Scarlets start to going to South Africa and getting absolutely smashed by Stormers and whoever the other side was, Bulls maybe.
Bulls.
Yeah,
Bulls.
Getting absolutely smashed by those two. It's expected, but it's a horrible way to start the season. It just all that kind of optimism when you're charging around in August in up sand dunes and whatnot, and then you get destroyed in your first 2 matches. It just punctures that balloon of optimism, really.
Yeah, so 4 of our first 5 games were at home this season. Now, we should have beaten Edinburgh. We had a really sizable lead. We talked about this on the pod, but we turned down kickable points. We made bad decisions. Yeah. We kicked to the corner when we shouldn't have done. So we was in a position to beat Edinburgh. We was like 12, 13 points ahead, Gabbers. We something silly. But of course, 12, when you got 12, so when you got a goal kicker like Ben Healy in your team, and if you give away penalties, he's going to kick him because he's a very good goal kicker. So that was a huge missed opportunity. We should have beaten them. Cardiff, again, a team we can never beat for some reason. We have a real hoodoo against them, but that was a winnable game. I was looking for 3 home wins in our first block. I mean, you're not going to beat Leinster, though, but I felt Edinburgh, Cardiff, and we did beat the Ospreys for winnable. But it's been a really disappointing first block for me personally. Just have. Okay, so let's move on to Europe then, and let's talk about Dragons' next opponents, Oyonnax. Now, you know a thing about them, don't you, Sam? You've done some work for Oyonnax, I understand, haven't you? So,
yes.
For our listeners who aren't fully aware of Oyonnax, can you tell us a bit about them and, their strengths, weaknesses, and the players that we should be looking out for? Although that is going to be difficult with Challenge Cup because they probably will rotate, I'm guessing, won't they?
Yeah, so Oyonnax are one of the 2 teams, really significant French teams who are based on the east of France. So they're in the Alps or on the outskirts of the Alps with Grenoble, who are in Division 2. Used to be, well, still is, but Munster coach Mike Prendergast was at Chambéry, which is also in the Alps, and Mike Phillips went to Bourgogne, which is also in the Alps. But so there's a little bit of rugby heritage in the French Alps, but most of it's down in the southwest, Toulouse and Pau and Castres, all those lot. So a little bit of an outlier. You probably will get I know it's at the Dragons, but there's some potentially very cold fixtures for teams going to Oyonnax in kind of this part time of the year. As you might expect for the French team, they wing it at home and then lose away. So this year they've beaten Clermont in the opening game at home by 19 points, and they've beaten La Rochelle at home by 2 points, and they've beaten Lyon, who were kind of expected to do quite well, although they've been pretty poor this year. So they do well. They're 11th out of 14 in the top 14. But they've had 4 wins from 9. So it tells you a lot about the league. The Racing have had 6 from 9 and they're leading. and Oyonnax are kind of the last of the teams who are just a couple of wins away from lasting. There's Lyon who've won 3 of 9, and Perpignan who've won 2 of 9, and Montpellier at the bottom just 1 of 9, who have inexplicably brought back Bernard Laporte. But one thing to look out for with Oyonnax is that their 22 entries are very good when they get into the opposition 22, but they're very poor when they let the opposition get into their 22. So that would be a key area to watch. If the Dragons give away penalties in their midfield and allow kickable opportunities, then that will be a difficult game to come away from. I think Oyonnax, they came up from Pro D2 last year. They're a very good side, and also, as we saw with George North going to Provence, so they're the Pro D2 and top 14 arguably a match for really any of the European leagues. Couple of people in the team that you probably will have heard of. So Rory Sutherland, he is there. He's made a few appearances, all off the bench so far this year. Someone who hasn't really played much, but is a Welsh cap, is Luke Hamilton. He went there a few years ago.
From Cardiff, wasn't he? Is that right? Former Cardiff and Leicester. Oh, right. You say okay.
Yeah, so he was with Cardiff back in the early 2010s, and then Leicester after that. But he's been at Oyonnax for 3 years now, but hasn't played at all this season yet, and only played sparingly last season. So I wouldn't expect to see him play, but he might well do. Someone to look out for who possibly you won't know is Kevin Le Breton in the back row, who was absolutely exceptional last year in Pro D2. He scored 8 tries from flanker. Really, really impressive, both in the line out and at the breakdown as well. So I would expect him to play. As you said at the start, it depends a little bit how seriously Oyonnax want to take this, but he has played every single game of the season. Not started all, but he's featuring every single one. Although he's yet to recapture his try-scoring form from last year. And then I'd also point to Charlie Kassang at scrum half, who again was a really good player last year, and also scored in the playoff final to come up from Pro D2. Again, he's featured a lot this year, but hasn't recaptured that try-scoring form. But again, he's someone to watch. It will be interesting to see who they go for with the starting lineup, because there's a lot of kind of players that they could choose from, and a little bit unclear kind of exactly where they're going to go in that way.
Oh, brilliant! Thank you very much for that. So after Oyonnax, we have Pau away from home in the Challenge Cup, which was Dragons' last away victory in all competitions. So it'd be quite funny if we do win this, when we go out there and we beat them, because that'll be the last time that we'll come full circle then. But it is interesting with the French teams in the Challenge Cup, though, isn't it? Because people will say, oh, the French don't care about the Challenge Cup, which isn't entirely true. I think what happens is they're not really asked in the group stages. But then once they get to the knockout stages, then you start to see stronger teams. And, we've had a few French winners over the years. I mean, I can't think of, all the French winners on the top of my head, but Toulon won it last year, didn't they, after battering Glasgow? So they do take it seriously, but maybe in the group stages, Sam, this is the time to play them and get the result, isn't it?
I definitely think so. I think there's an element of the French teams trying, I think because they play so many games in the season and it's also so long, I think they often see it as a chance to best players. And I think you see a little bit of that in the Champions Cup as well. Like, there are teams who massively underperform in that, who should be better.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say it's a great time to play them, because they're coming off a good start to their season, but not a great start. And so they will feel relatively comfortable in the top 14. I think I think Montpellier will improve. They're too good a team to stay at the bottom. But I think Perpignan are probably a good bet to go down. So as long as Oyonnax just stay clear, they'll be happy. But I suspect they might see this as a nice couple of weeks to rest their star players and bring them back fresh afterwards. Having said that, though, some of those guys I mentioned haven't played a huge amount, and so they may want to go for a little bit of a run out. And also, I think if I were the team like the Scarlets or the Dragons, where there's no risk of relegation and the chance of a playoff is not mathematically obviously gone, but realistically gone, I would be turning my full attention to the Challenge Cup, because it's a good chance to get some numbers in, get a couple of wins under your belt, and then that could kickstart your whole season. Whereas I think Oyonnax will feel relatively settled where they are, and possibly will be looking on to the domestic scene.
Yeah. Funny enough, we talked about this on the Rap podcast last night, where I said that I think the Welsh region's best chance of any success will be in the Challenge Cup rather than the URC. And we talked about the Ospreys. Now, look, I know they've never won a quarter final. They are the island of club rugby in that sense. They never won a quarter final. But I feel that would be a really good opportunity for Toby Bruceman to get some success. And now they've got a good squad, a good head coach. And I know Dave Flanagan's talked about this, giving Europe a good run this year. I mean, I would love to see Dragons have a home quarter final. I mean, we limped into the quarterfinals last year. Then we ended up playing Glasgow away, and we ended up having 70+ points put on us. So I would love to see us, have a home quarterfinal, because it is a nice distraction, Sam, isn't it? Away from, if you're struggling in the league, Europe, a new focus, a new competition, it can, hopefully spark something, can't it? And we saw it with the Scarlets last season. As a Scarlets fan yourself, they really struggled in the URC. They had a couple of big wins in the Challenge Cup, and that seemed to be a springboard then for them to have a really strong second half of the season. So it is important, these games, isn't it?
It is massively so, yeah, and they are winnable. Like, I think Oyonnax is a big challenge, but is a potential win. I think Poe, they're the better side, but they will likely have turned their attention fully to the top 14, where they actually have a decent chance for the first time in a few years of getting to the playoffs and then having a good shout at potentially taking home the title. Obviously, it's very early days, but they're looking very good this year. So I'd expect Oyonnax to put out a slightly weaker side and Poe to put out a much weaker side. And if you think the Dragons, after Poe, they've got 10 days off until Cardiff, then it's back-to-back with Scarlets, but then they've got almost 2 weeks off and then another 2 weeks off after the next game. So they're not cramming the games in. And which I think is good from the URC. It's good to have these weeks off.
Yeah.
So I think it's you make a hard case to say that they're going to damage their URC hopes by having a go at Europe. At this point, you think what's the worst case scenario? Really, maybe they're a bit tired for a URC game that they're good value to lose anyway. So
that horse is long bolted. I don't think we need to worry about shutting that particular door.
Yes, yeah, exactly. It's out in the field, and it's it's making its way to the next farm. But so yeah, I think Europe, and also a trip to the thing with Europe. I'm really looking forward to try and get some trips in this year to some European games, because a trip down to France to watch a game that you actually might win is a great a great thing to do.
Just to say as well, I will not be taking Oyonnax for granted this weekend, because if you cast your mind back, and Gav will know this last season, Hull came down to Rodney Parade. They put out a second string squad. They didn't even have a head coach because he'd been suspended for 10 weeks for bloody yanking the referee's arm. So I'm very reluctant to trust the Dragons at the moment. So whatever side Oyonnax are going to bring, it's no guarantees of a win. No. And they're going to be solid up front. As they're all French teams, they will always have a strong pack. And that's my other concern as well, because some games our scrum fronts up and others they simply don't. I mean, we dismantled the Osprey scrum, and how we did that, I have no idea. I mean, Rodri Jones was indestructible that day for some reason. I don't know how, but he really did have his Weetabix that day. And then the next game, it got absolutely destroyed by the Sharks. But then it was Springbok players in fault. So what was you going to say then, Gav?
No, I was just going to say, Ian, the thing with Dragons, you can't ever assume anything anymore now. That's I go into it with just a mild sense of concern. And if it doesn't get worse than a mild sense of concern, I'm fine with that, really.
Yeah, that's what you need. You don't need anything more than just light concern, just pulling you through.
Yeah, mild concern is fine. When you're in your head in your hands kind of mode, like it was against Sharks. Yeah,
That was so horrible to watch, wasn't it?
oh,
I
well.
said to you, because you watched the game back, I said, I hope you like video nasties, because it was really horrible to watch. It was like watching a horror film. It was brutal, really, really brutal. Okay, so let's get a score prediction from you then, Sam, before you leave us. How do you think this is going to go?
Well, I'll whatever I say, if I get it right, I'll obviously do a lap. But if I get it wrong, I'll be blaming the either Oyonnax or Dragons for not trying hard enough / putting out the right team. But I would like to see. I've got a huge soft spot for Oyonnax, partly because they got me to do some work for them, but partly because I just like them being in that part of the world. But I think Dragons could ease it by a couple. So let's say 22-19.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, fingers crossed, Dragons do get a win, because like I said, we could do with a win and a bit of a confidence boost. Okay, so where can people find you then, Sam? We want to check out your excellent threads and all the work that you do for Rugby Pass and Rugby World, etc. Where can people find you on the socials?
Yeah, so on Twitter or X, I've still not quite got down to calling it X. I'm not sure if I'm going to fully lean that way, but they can find me at Sam L Stands Up. And then if you want to do anything on Rugby World or Rugby Pass, I think just typing Sam Larner Rugby into Google and you'll see a few of my articles there.
Brilliant. Have you not made the trip over to Blue Sky yet? That's what a lot of people are doing. There is a small sort of rugby community that's building there. You don't fancy doing that, or?
I am quite keen actually. I haven't made the trip over, but that's more due to laziness than anything else. It took me a while to get onto Twitter back in the day, and I was on Bebo about 6 months before it finished. So I'm not.
Oh, that's a blast from the past, Bebo. Bloody hell, making me feel old. That is.
I'm too old for Bebo. I never used Bebo. The kids I taught used Bebo.
Yeah. Did you ever use Flensburg United, Gav?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. That's very much a marker. But yeah, I probably will be on Blue Sky at some point. Probably using the same handle if it's not already taken.
Fantastic.
I'm deliberately going to take it now. I'll sell it back to Sam.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me there, guys. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Dragons go, and yeah, absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Just to say, you can watch the game on S4C. So if you're not doing anything Saturday night, if you're not watching any other games, the game is available to watch on S4C. So yeah, thank you very much for joining us, Sam. It's really appreciated. Yeah, thanks again, and we'll get you on the pod again, I think, because you've been a very knowledgeable and great guest for us. Thank you so much for giving up your time.
Thank you, Jamie. You'll let me know if I'm knowledgeable when you see the result on Saturday. But thank
you. Cheers, Sam. Nice one.
Cheers, guys. See you later.
Thank you.
Cheers, Sam.
Bye now. There we go. Sam Larner. Very knowledgeable guy. I like Sam. Yeah. He just really knows his stuff that Gav doesn't. He knows his onions.
No, he does, right, and I think he communicates in a really understandable way. You know, he doesn't make too much of a joke of it, but you know, it's not delivered really straight either. You know, I think he's very good at doing that, and I would say that because he's a friend of mine. But you know, he is good anyway. Without that,
the threads he does.
Yeah,
on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. So good. Like I said, the Strictly one was superb because anyone could relate to that. You don't have to be a rugby nut to understand and appreciate that. And, you know, people can really learn a thing or two when you try and make it fun and informative.
He did one about kicking that was superb, just genuinely superb.
Yeah, any Dragons supporter that moans about this kicking, go and follow Sam. Look at his threads. He does explain it in a fantastic, informative, fun way. He's a very knowledgeable guy. Good bloke. Right then, Gav, let's get on to it then. Dragons 49, Dragons 24. So a poor second half saw Dragons fall to a successive heavy defeat in South Africa. Dragons had been in the contest at half time and they were boosted by red card. for Lions lock Ruben Schumann, which was a red card.
Oh,
I've seen a
God,
lot
yes.
of Lions. I've seen a lot of Lions player supporters on social media saying it was never red and it was harsh. You can't elbow people in the head.
No,
Sorry,
not generally.
you can't
You
do
know,
that.
it's what
No.
happened to Tane, wasn't it? You know, Tane did it.
Yeah. I'm very surprised, Ashton. I didn't see him go off a HIA, or maybe he did, but he was knocked out when he sparked. So,
Oh, yeah.
it was definitely a red, despite
It,
what any
it was down
Lions
as a
fan.
HIA as well.
Yeah, so that definitely was a red, as far as I said. There's not even a debate to be had.
No.
But basic errors, once again, cost Die Flanken's injury hit side as they leaked 6 tries in Johannesburg. So Dragons returned home, having conceded 118 points on this tour, which unfortunately is more than the Scarlets. Well, it's only 3 more than the Scarlets, but it's a whopping 118 points we conceded. And now we turn our attention to Europe and Oyonnax, as we talked about them on Saturday. So I think for me, Gav, the first thing I would say about this game is this was a much better performance than the one we saw against Sharks. We did see them play with a lot more intent in attack. You know, they were giving it a good crack. In fairness, they played with a lot of ambition, and we did score some nice tries. We didn't score 4, which would have given us a try bonus point, but we did score 3 really good tries. But unfortunately, Gav, it's the same old story with the Dragons, isn't it, this season? Unforced errors, missed opportunities, and poor discipline. And the biggest takeaway from that match for me was Lions scored 6 tries in total. 5 of those tries were through Dragons' errors.
Mm-hmm.
So the first half, you had Steph Hughes attempted a grubber kick, which was never on. A really poor decision. I don't know what Steph was thinking. Steph is not having a good season, by the way.
He is not.
It has to be
He
said.
really isn't.
As much as I like Steph Hughes, he's not having a good season. That was a poor decision. So yeah, that gets charged down. Lions counter attack, they score. Then we got another try then in the first half. So we're applying pressure in the red zone. We win a penalty. Will Reed does really well. He gets the ball right in the corner. It's a fantastic kick. We go through the phases. I can't quite see who knocks it on. It looks like George Nott. I've watched it back several times. It's not entirely clear who knocks
No,
the
it's
ball
one
on.
of the
Did you see?
No, I think it was George Nott, but
Yeah.
like you say, I wasn't 100% sure.
Yeah, so George Nott knocks it on. Lions counter attack, play advantage. They go from their own try line right up the other end and they score. So 2 errors in the first half, 2 Dragons tries. Then in the second half, Rio Dyer spills the ball from a kick. Ref plays advantage, Lions score. Joe Davis, fresh off the bench. I don't know what happened. He just was nowhere near it. He just drops a pass. Pretty sloppy, if I'm being honest. Advantage played, Lions score. And then the last Lions try came from an overthrown lineout by Bradley Roberts, which is really frustrating, and Lions score. So all those tries, well, all of them, 5 tries out of the 6 were from Dragons' errors. And that's really, really frustrating. That's why I asked that question with Sam about why do we keep making these errors? And, you know, what does it come down to? Is it coaching? Is it players? Is it both? And I think that's what upset me the most about this game, Gav, is we gifted the Lions easy points. You know, we didn't make them work hard enough. And don't get me wrong, they were the better team. Of course they were. And they dominated the breakdown. We really struggled at the breakdown. But even when they were down to 14 men, they got comfortable, didn't they, Lions? You know, we didn't pressure them enough. We never took advantage of that extra man advantage.
It never looked like we had them extra man. That was my issue with it as well. And what we were, and this is a thing though, this is a thing this season, and this is something that has to be coached. We can't deal with counter-attacks.
No.
We saw it with Mason Grady against Cardiff. We saw it against Sharks, and we've seen it against Lions. That if a team counter-attacks, we do not organise ourselves defensively at all. I wouldn't even say, well, we don't do it at all. And teams stroll in for scores.
Yeah. The discipline was another issue. So Dave Flanagan talked about, you know, getting off to a good start. He mentioned the first 20 minutes being really important. And Roddy Williams gets a yellow for a deliberate knock-on.
Yes,
ironically, we actually play well when we're down to 40 men. We scored a really good try. And Aaron Owen does well to charge our kick down. The gas from Wainwright, who, in fairness, I thought he was fantastic in a losing course. Aaron Wainwright was really, really good. And Jordan Williams flings a wild pass, not for the first time in that game. Thankfully, it is gathered. And Keddy goes over and you're thinking, oh, hang on. You know, we could come away with something. I'm not saying, I didn't think we were going to win at that point, but I thought maybe we can come away with something. But unfortunately, the errors, the discipline,
They
Bradley
just came back,
Roberts, we
didn't
talked
they?
about, we talked about how good Bradley Roberts has been. You know how much I love Bradley. That trip, it was absolutely daft, wasn't it? And we were 18-10 down. We were still in the game at that point. We were chasing the game, and then Bradley does that, gets himself in the sin bin. You're like, why? Why do that? What goes through the head when you're doing stuff like that?
We keep
I
making
just found it really
errors.
frustrating. I know, and it's so frustrating,
But
isn't it?
it's not just errors in the game. It's just like poor judgment as well. That trip, kind of Rodri's knock on there. It's all stuff you can choose not to do.
Yeah, and
because sometimes you'll get a yellow card for stuff you're not really in control of. You might have ridden up in a tackle, might be a penalty, but tripping or just batting the ball down in the hope that, no, come on, you've got to make better decisions than that.
Absolutely. So Dave Flanagan, after the game, said we were just really inaccurate. It's frustrating because there were opportunities galore. Yeah, quite right. Listen to this, Gav. This is what he says. I don't know if you see these comments. We've just got to catch the ball. We've just got to make a tackle. We've got to work on that individually and collectively. These are professional rugby players, Gav.
Yes.
And Dave Flanagan is coming out saying we need to work on catching the ball and making tackles. I find that quite concerning, I do. Do you?
Oh, I played rugby with a guy on Saturday who's nearly 40 and has never played rugby union in his life. He's a rugby league player, but hasn't played that in 10 years. And he could make tackles and catch the ball. So it worries me the guys who are trained to do it are struggling to do it.
Yeah, it's just so frustrating, and something needs to be done about the errors and the discipline. It's just really frustrating. And look, I know we got a lot of injuries. Like I say, we're 16 players unavailable, and you have got to take into account the altitude, the hot. It was very hot in Johannesburg. Rhian did tell us about that, and
absolutely.
I think we were blowing out of our asses in the last 20 minutes.
Oh God,
the
by
fitness
the end
was an issue. We looked absolutely knackered, like we did against the Sharks. We're just not fit enough to cope in these conditions. Those factors have to be taken into account. But I was hoping for a bonus point out of this game. I never expected us to win, but I was hoping for a bonus point. And we had the chance of a bonus point, but we just missed too many opportunities. And then we're let down by the poor discipline, the bad decision making, the errors, the knock-ons. Yeah, it's just another frustrating loss, Gav, isn't it?
And if we leave points out on the field and we aren't a team who can afford to do that.
No.
Because, if we weren't getting the chances, fine, you're not getting the chances. But when you're leaving chances out on the field, that is the problem.
Yeah. Okay, let's open our mailbox then. Let's see what our listeners got to say. So let's start with the Rodney Raw fan account on Twitter. 2 tough games as expected, but we've been found wanting.
Yeah.
Can we take any positives from this tour? So there's a question for you, Gav. Can we, as supporters, take any positives whatsoever from this tour?
We didn't come away with too many extra injuries, I suppose, apart from Kai Evans.
Yeah.
We scored
any
some tries.
Positives?
We scored some tries.
That's it, is it? Or...
Yeah, I think so.
I know it's hard to find many positives, isn't it?
Yeah.
I have to say as well, I thought Ashton Hewitt had a very good game.
He did.
That's probably the best game I've seen him have in a long time. With ball in hand. There were a couple of tackles that left.
He's not good defensively, though. He's never been good defensively, has he? Kind of bless him. I do like him as a player and as a bloke generally, but he's never been good defensively, which is why he's never really gone to Welsh team.
Yeah, and I would give a shout out to Matthew Screech, who I thought worked incredibly hard. He was our top tackler again on the weekend. As I mentioned earlier, for Aaron Wainwright was really, really good. He was given everything in the lost cause, 2 lost causes. But other than that, it is difficult to see, to take away too many positives, isn't it? Like I said, we conceded 118 points, which was 3 more points than the Scarlets, and they had a tough tour to South Africa. But
they did indeed.
Yeah, like I said, I was just hoping for a bonus point or 2. We didn't get it. So, not too many positives to take away.
Not really.
Steve Davis. Oh, go on.
No, I was just going to say, And there aren't many positives to take away. And if we try to make it sound too positive, I think we're just papering over cracks. I think we're not quite in crisis, but we're not far off crisis now.
No, and you don't want to be that what I call the Dragons apologists, because there are
No.
some people in our fan base who are Dragons apologists, and sometimes you have got to be honest and call out poor performances, you know.
Yes.
So Steve Davis says, what happened last weekend? It looked chaotic and disorganized. How will we get the Wales players to resign if we carry on like this? So he's talking about players like Rio Dyer and Aaron Wainwright, who I believe are out of contract this season. He's saying, how are we going to get them to resign if we carry on like this? What I would say is I think they're under the cap threshold. I don't know, but no, Wainwright isn't, does he? I'm not sure how many caps he got, but Rio Dyer is under the cap threshold. So he'll have to stay with us.
Now. It's 25 now, isn't it? So, yeah, Wainwright's fine. Wainwright will go to England or France, I imagine.
Will he, though, do you think? Because, you know, Warren Gatland likes his best players in Wales, doesn't he? And, you know, you start missing training sessions. It does count against you if you go to England or France. So,
but if you could earn more money and play winning rugby, you'd probably do it, wouldn't you?
I don't blame him if he did. I'd be really gutted by that. But
I know he's a Newport boy, so maybe that will, you know, the call of Newport will be too strong for him.
Yeah, we are also a Newport boy, but winning performances will help keep players at a club if they can see progress being made. But you know, if we're losing week in, week out, it must be pretty demoralizing for players and frustrating for them as well, isn't it? So
100%. You know, I've been inside. I was on the side that didn't win a game for a season. It is quite difficult to lace your boots up, but knowing that's your job as well must be even worse.
Yeah. So my answer to Steve's question is: are we going to get them to resign contracts by winning and showing progress? That's how you do it. Nathan Dart. 2 score lines, let's be honest, probably we expected. Biggest concern for me is the injuries before and during the tour. Surely with the backroom staff departures, players loaned out, we can strengthen for, let's be honest, 2 season-defining derbies over Christmas. I don't see us making any signings in the backroom or on the field now. But no. Were those 2 score lines as expected for you, Gav?
I was a bit bigger than I was imagining initially, I think. Yeah. You know, I thought we could keep them within 20 points. Well, we nearly did with Lions, but I thought we could keep Sharks within 20 points as well.
Yeah, and let's be honest about that. As I mentioned earlier, 2 scorelines as we expected. Okay, you know, if you look at the Sharks game, we were heavily beaten, but there were some soft tries that we gave away. And as I've already mentioned with the Lions game, we gave them away a lot of points. So it didn't have to be that way, actually. It didn't have to be so heavy. If we hadn't made so many errors, it could have been closer and a lot more competitive. But when you're gifting tries to the opposition, then the scoreline does become as expected. But it didn't have to be that way.
I think we gave 9 tries away across those 2 games.
9 tries you counted, yeah?
Yeah, that was 4 against Sharks and 5 against Lions. So that's, you know, that's nearly...
Yeah.
That's a lot of points. You know, that's best part of 60 points, 70 points.
If you cut the errors, they're not going to be high-scoring games. And okay, we'll still lose, but if you cut it, it makes the scoreline respectable. But when you keep making errors and gifting points, then it starts to become lopsided, and then we do think to ourselves, oh, you know, this is same old Dragons, what we expect. But it didn't have to be that way, I guess. Yeston says, why do we struggle to carry our first half performance into the second half? I mean, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to it, but he is right. I don't know what goes on in the team talk in the changing room, but we always come out the second half.
Well, I do have an answer for Yeston for this one, I think.
Oh, okay.
For both the last 2 games anyway, it's been the conditions. You know, we play in Newport. We were playing in tropical heat, tropical humidity, and then we were playing in extreme heat at altitude. That's going to take in the thing and goes down. Why we were rubbish in the second half against Edinburgh, who knows? But
that's the thing, isn't it? It's not just in South Africa. You know, we are generally not. We don't come out the second half firing, do we? Even when we're in the lead or we're chasing the game, we just don't seem to come out all guns blazing, So I don't know what goes on in the changing room, what the team talk is, but you've got to wonder, haven't you, what's
Yes.
being said. Okay, so Garth Leclerc says we are currently struggling with strength in depth. Twas ever thus, let's be honest.
Yes. Yeah.
However, due to cut 700k from the wage bill next season, how do you see us being competitive next year? Also, will our new owners invest in the coaching setup? We desperately need a defence coach and more experience in camp. Well, absolutely, and we've talked about that, haven't we? I'm not happy with this coaching setup. This, to me, is a Welsh Principality coaching setup. I know they're highly rated coaches. I do rate Dave Flanagan. I still think there's valid question marks about him being a head coach, but I just don't think he's got the experience support network that he needs around him, personally.
Well, we absolutely need new people around him. I don't want to get rid of Di because I think we should invest in him. But if he is not surrounded by experienced people, it is not going to get better.
No, and we definitely need a defence coach. For
100%.
those asking, so it's Sam Hobbs, who's the academy head coach. He helps out with the defence with Dave Flanagan, but we don't have a specialist defence coach, and I think it showed in some of those games that we've seen this season. But
some of it's unforgivable, though. Some of it is unforgivable. Reorganizing yourself from a counter attack. Yeah, and any coach should be able to develop a plan for that.
Yeah, I agree. The first part of the question, we do have to cut 700k from the budget, and how do we see us being competitive next season? So for those who aren't aware, all the Welsh teams now are operating on a budget of around 5.2. That's going to come down next season to 4.5. I think all the Welsh regions face this dilemma, not just us. How do you remain competitive when you've got to make further cuts? I think we're going to have to make some very difficult decisions on certain players. Yes. One of them being Leon Brown, who's also coming to the end of his contract. It's a difficult question to ask, but can we afford to keep him on given his injury record? That's a question that Dave Flanagan and the Dragons board, they've got to start asking the difficult questions. Can we afford to carry players with? We know Leon's got the talent and ability, but we barely see him. We're going to have to really make some tough decisions on key players, Gav, aren't we?
What does he bring at the minute? Does he bring more than he takes? And right now, that's not the case, is it? He's a good player, but I don't know how many games he's played for Dragons in the last 2 seasons. It won't be lots, will it? I just don't think he's bringing a lot to the party right now, and he's probably on a higher wage, and we could afford to lose him.
Yeah, it's a difficult one with Leon. I don't really want to see him go, but like I said, we've got cut 700k, and you're going to have to think some big names are going to have to leave to get that down, aren't you? So I'm expecting to see like Bertrand is going to.
Yeah, I was going to say Bertrand is nailed on, isn't he?
He's going to have to go, I think. Yeah. It'd be a shame. I could see someone like maybe C.O. Tompkinson moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think all the Southern Hemisphere guys will. I think Aki will.
Yeah. Do you know how many appearances Leon Brown has made in the last 4 seasons?
Last 4? I'm going to say 26, and I'm being massively over the top there, I reckon.
He's made 23 appearances in the past 4 seasons. So, like I said, that's a dilemma for the Dragons. They could have got rid of Ollie Griffiths last year, and there were people saying that we should have let Ollie go and kept Ben Fry. I was one of those, as much as I love Ollie, but that wage bill needs to come down somehow, and I'm afraid we're going to have to make some difficult decisions and let some players go who we may not want to let go for sentimental reasons and personal reasons, but it's a difficult one, Gav.
Well, you kind of Bertrand was a great player, but we don't have him enough to justify the amount of money he's earning.
No.
And he can probably earn even more money in France.
Yeah, he probably will. And, I would like to keep CO as well. I still don't think we've really seen the best of him, but I do like him. But again, it's difficult, isn't it? So we'll have to see what happens there. So Richard Hicks says, an improvement on the Sharks game. Yeah. I can't help but feel there are 4 or 5 players in our starting 15 simply not good enough for this level to be starting most weeks. Yeah. But they are slightly too good for the Welsh Prem. And he's talking about having A games, but I mean, that's not going to happen because
Not enough
there's
players.
no room in a calendar. Not enough players. There's no room in a calendar. Who would they play? Where would they play? When would they play? And this is what the Elite League is being set up for, isn't it? I understand. It's just try and get those players.
But the thing is, and this is where Welsh rugby comes and kills me now, because I'm going to say what I think on the Elite League. If the Elite League is just, kind of Pontypool, Ebervale, whoever goes in there, and it's just a continuation of that, the same problems will continue that have plagued us for ages. If the Elite League is going to be successful, it needs to be set up in such that by connections to historic clubs or anything. It needs to be no more than 8 teams, and it needs to be 8 teams made up of guys in academies. It needs to be made up of guys on the fringes of first team and the best players from the Premiership. And it needs to be super competitive week in, week out.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, last it's not really a question, it's a comment from Daniel Green. Whole team lacks consistency. Defense can be good and awful in the same set. No clear tactics either. Yes.
It's fairly.
Not much to be said about that, is there really?
Well, we could disagree. I think we'd be wrong. Yeah. If you ask me what's Dragons' playing style right now, I couldn't tell you.
There are times where we look good defensively. We do bring some good defensive sets, but then they miss, one-up tackles. Yes. And that's frustrating.
Which is unforgivable. Like you said,
on the counter-attack, we saw a couple of players got bumped off, didn't we? But for one of the Lions tries, when they went the whole length of the field, you're thinking, oh, come on, that's not acceptable.
Not at that level, that shouldn't be happening.
No. Okay, thank you for your comments and questions. Let's move on to, this shouldn't take too long. Gav's Gwent Rugby Roundup. Did any rugby actually get played on the weekend? Because there was a whole lot of fixtures.
One game was played on Thursday. Ebervale travelled to Aberavon and lost 24-13. Aberavon, who'd lost 4 in a row, and Ebervale, who kind of been doing very well, and lost 24-13 away to Aberavon. Other than that, there was absolutely no rugby really played.
No. Did you watch the Aberavon-Ebervale game by any chance?
I didn't, sadly.
Did you see Jason Hyatt's interview after the game?
I saw that. I saw that.
Very emotional. I like that. I think that's nice to see. Like, you could tell they desperately needed that win because I don't think many people fancied them against Ebervale, who were looking really good this season. I just thought it was nice to see a bit of raw emotion from coaches, rather than just being robotic and talking the media spin. It's part of me was happy for him. I would have liked to see Evan win, but it was nice to see, coach showing our raw emotion.
No, and I think and it's because he's put a lot of effort in that. And he's not getting paid a lot of money for that. He's getting expenses.
Yeah, no. Okay, that's the shortest Gwent Rugby Roundup we've had on this podcast so far, isn't it? Right then, let's rate the match day playlist. So this week is Ollie Griffiths. This is the songs he chose for the Edinburgh game. So for those who aren't aware, the Dragons are doing a feature where they're asking players to contribute 6 songs to the match day playlist at Rodney Parade. So this is his first choice, Gav. A band I like quite a lot, although this song is a bit meh for me, is Bring Me to Life by Evanescence.
It's not for me.
Do you like Evanescence? No,
not a fan? I really don't. I really don't. What is it? What is Evanescence?
Evanescence are like, I don't want to say goth rock, but they are a bit like that. They're a bit like, Within Temptation and Nightwish, but better, I would say.
Oh, no, they're better than Nightwish, but then, kind of so is everything. But, they're a bit gothy, they're a bit poppy, they're a bit metal. They're not really anything. It's just a bit of everything. Bring Me to Life is all right. Kind of. I like the guitar tone on it. It's quite crunchy, but I really can't cope with the blokes rapping.
Yeah, apparently Amy Lee, the singer, she doesn't like that part, and that wasn't supposed to be it. That was sort of added last minute, but they went with it, and it became a massive smash hit. I mean, that was the song that made them, wasn't it? I've seen Evanescence live in Cardiff years ago on the first album they did, the Fallen tour. Amy Lee has got a hell of a voice. She's got very talented. Very
Yeah.
talented woman, really.
Yeah, she can
Yeah.
really sing. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, then let's move on. This is an interesting one. Free Love Freeway by David Brent. Are you a Ricky Gervais fan?
No, in a word, no. I think he's a fairly grim human being. He punches down. He just punches down. It's a comedy of cruelty. And he'll say, "Oh, it's meaningful." It's not meaningful, mate. It's not caring. There's no tenderness to it. You punch down because you're a bully.
So you don't like shows like The Office, Afterlife? You
I
haven't
like The
watched any of that?
Office. I think The Office is
Office is
great.
good, yeah.
Yeah, The Office is great. But The Office is great because you know he's a terrible human being. You're not meant to like Brent. Brent is a terrible
No.
human being. If you like David Brent, you miss the point of that entire show.
Yeah.
And kind of to try and turn Brent into this figure. He's not a figure of fun. The bloke is a terrible human being, and that's the whole point of The Office. You end up liking the good human beings. You end up liking Tim, and I can't remember her name. You don't like Gareth. You don't like Finchy. You don't like Brent because they aren't very nice human beings.
No. I do like Ricky Gervais. I love his work. I liked Extras, The Office, and I loved Afterlife on Netflix. Really loved that show. But I can understand why you and a lot of people don't like him. He's very divisive, Ricky Gervais, and I completely get
It's
it.
Derek.
But
It was
I do
Derek
like
that did it for me.
Oh, Derek was good. Yeah. Oh, you didn't like Derek, did you?
No, because he just felt like it was punching down.
Oh, yeah. I can see what you mean. I can see what you mean by that. Yeah. Okay, so that's a no from you then.
And I also didn't like the Carl Pilkington thing because it felt like he was bullying Carl Pilkington.
I think he plays on it, mind Carl Pilkington. I don't
Oh,
think
he
he's quite
does.
as daft as he makes out.
I
He's
really
playing
don't
the
think.
idiot, doesn't he?
I don't think for 1 second either. But saying that kind of Free Love Freeway is quite funny as a song. The episode of The Office when he sings it is the best Office episode.
It's in the film Life on the Road.
I've not watched
that song. So yeah. No, you won't.
but he sings it in the Office episode when they have the training day, don't they? And they'll bring me the guitar, which is that and the quiz night episode are the two best episodes.
Yeah, I agree with you. So we're off to a good start here then, Gav. You haven't liked any of these songs. What about this one then? It's a classic. Gets played on radio all the time. American Pie by Don McLean. Would you stand on that one?
I'm not a fan.
No,
I'm not a fan. It's too long. Why is it going for so long?
You can say that about Freebird though, Lynyrd Skynyrd. It's still a great song. I don't mind long songs. Long songs are fine if you like them though.
Oh God, yeah, one of my favorite songs is Station to Station by David Bowie, which is 9.5 minutes.
Yeah.
But the thing with American Pie is it also reminds me of drunk blokes in the pub my mum used to run because it'd be, or can I have a pound's change for the jukebox? And you're like, oh my God, I know what's coming. And then American Pie would come on 5 times in the next 10 songs. And it'd be loads of half-cut middle-aged blokes, probably younger than I am now, but at that time felt like middle-aged blokes singing along with American Pie. Also, it's responsible for one of the worst covers ever.
Oh, Madonna's. Oh my God, that is an absolute atrocity. That is widely regarded as the worst ever cover version ever of a classic song.
Let me guide you towards Duran Duran's version of 911 is a Joke by Public Enemy.
I've not heard that, and I don't think I want to hear it, to be quite honest.
Why do you not want to hear a bunch of white middle-aged millionaires singing a song about the difficulties of calling ambulances in black districts in America? Can't imagine why you wouldn't want to listen to that. It is awful.
I do like Duran Duran, though. I will say that. I know you want to prove for that. I like Duran
Duran. I'm not anti-Duran Duran. I like some of their stuff. I like particularly earlier stuff. Do you know the song The Chauffeur?
Yes, off the first album.
That's a great song.
Yeah, lots of Duran Duran love then. Okay, so the next one, we're both going to like this one, aren't we? Welcome to the Jungle, Guns N' Roses. You can't argue with that.
It's a banger. It's an absolute banger, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's a song we've heard a million times as rock fans, so we never get bored of.
It doesn't matter because it's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
good choice
there,
Ollie.
Truly great songs.
This next song, I never heard of it before, and I never heard of the guy. It's Come Running by Darren Styles. So I saw it. I thought, well, I've never heard of this. So I played it today, and it starts off really nice. You think, oh, it's a really nice ballad. And then it takes a horrible turn into like techno clubland nonsense that you're in vibes at 4 o'clock in the morning. It's not a good song. Have you heard it?
I did listen to it when I saw on the list. Yeah, it's a bit like the kind of thing someone sings on the X-Files when they're trying to, bring the energy up. Not the X-Files, X Factor.
I was going to say X-Files.
Fox Mulder is singing it.
It does though. It takes a really bizarre turn because when you first, the first few seconds, oh, this is really nice ballad, and then it just like goes, dun, 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 dun. You're like, oh no, 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 no.
It sounds like something that came 8th on Eurovision.
Oh, it's bloody awful. It does sound like a Eurovision song, funny enough, doesn't it? You can imagine, I don't know, bloody Sweden or Denmark or Italy just coming up with that sort of nonsense, couldn't you? The last track, I mean, this is a classic. It's not my cup of tea, but it is a classic. It's Sandstorm by Darude. I mean, this song has been in so many films, so many television adverts. It's very popular with a lot of sports teams. So Nottingham Forest play this. Apparently, at halftime, when they come out after halftime, they play Darude Sandstorm. What are your thoughts on this one, Gav?
It brings back really kind of stressful memories of it was being played in a change room for a team I was playing for. And one of my teammates, in nothing but his pants, dancing in as mad as ever to this tune. So whenever I hear it now, I just have that image in my head. I say, oh my God, no, I don't want to think about that. The thing is, for what it is, that kind of Euro pop trance stuff, it's good. It does that thing very well. It's not something I would ever choose to listen to.
No, like I said, it's not my cup of tea, but I appreciate it is a club classic, and like I said, it's been used so many times in TV and radio and
Can you remember
video games.
You're younger than me, so I don't even know if you'd remember it, but you're a whole decade younger than me. Can you remember Children by Robert Miles?
Yes, classic. They used to use that on, do you remember a Welsh television show called Week In, Week Out? It was like a BBC Wales current affairs program. That was the feature. I do. It's a very, very good song. Can you name another Robert Miles song? Because I can't.
No,
off the top of my head. That's literally the only song I know.
Yeah, that's the only one
that's
I
a brilliant song. That's a brilliant song. Yeah. 90s classic, that one, isn't it? Right then. Okay, so these are the songs that Ollie's chosen. Bring Me to Life, Evanescence, Free Love Freeway by David Brent, American Pie, Don McLean, Welcome to the Jungle, Guns N' Roses, Come Running by Dan Styles, and Sandstorm by Darude. What are you marking this out of 10, Gav?
4.
4?
Yeah.
It's annoying for me, this playlist, because there's some really good tracks. I mean, I love the Guns N' Roses, Evanescence. Like I said, I'm not a big fan of that song, but I do like Evanescence. And I do like the David Brent one. But then it's, the Darren Styles and the Don McLean, and it's a bit, it tails off, doesn't it? Quite rapidly, I'm afraid. Yeah. So I'm going to give it a 6, I think. I'm going to be a bit more kind and give it a 6. So, yes, that's where I am with that one. So what did you say, Gav? What was your score?
4.
4, okay. So 4 and 6, right. I think we got Ben Carter's playlist to look forward to. I think we're going to hate that. From what I've seen, I think we're going to hate it. But there we go then. Right, let's move on then before we wrap up. We talked about it earlier with Sam. We are playing Oyonnax in the Challenge Cup on Saturday night, kick-off 8 o'clock. The game is live on S4C as well, so we can all watch that one. Or some of us can go to the game, depending on where you are. And if you fancy it, it's going to be a very cold night, I assume. It's not a good kick-off time, 8 o'clock on a Saturday night in Newport, but I'm guessing that is because of French TV. That would be my guess as to why it's 8 o'clock. So look, we've had a disappointing first block in URC. We move into Europe. This is, new focus, new competition. How do we feel going into this game, Gav?
The thing is, you can't really make a prediction because you don't know what Oyonnax team is going to turn up.
Yeah, exactly. It's tough, isn't it?
If we get their best team, then they'll beat us by 10, 15. If they send a weakened team, then we'll beat them.
I do feel that we've got a good opportunity to get a win here and try and install some confidence. And I know that the Dragons are taking the Challenge Cup seriously. They want to do well. It would be nice to have some success in this competition, wouldn't it? Because the URC is a struggle for us all, but especially for Dragons right now, where we are at the bottom of the table. It would be nice, to have a good run in the competition, give fans something to cheer about and look forward to, isn't it?
Yeah, and something to bounce off.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't know. Well, we don't have any idea what the teams are going to be. We are recording early in the week than we would usually do. I've seen Elliot D's face on the poster for the image they've been putting out for this game, so I'm assuming he's going to be available. Are we going to see Bertrand back? Hopefully we will. But it'd be nice to see him at some point this season, wouldn't it? But with all the injuries we got, it's hard to know who's available. I did read Dave Flanagan say that he may not risk Ollie in these European games. He may keep him for the Welsh derbies, which is probably sensible. I get that. But it's just knowing who's available and who we got, really, isn't it?
Fans something to cheer about.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So let's get a prediction then, Gav, before we wrap up. What are you going to say? What's your score prediction?
Well, either 19-14 to us or 26-12 to them, depending on the teams.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a high-scoring game at all. I think this is going to be a bit of a slugfest. I just got that feeling this is going to be a bit of a struggle. We need to get parity up front, obviously, but I am going to back the Dragons win. What was my score prediction on that? I can't remember what I said. Did I say Dragons by 5 or 6? Well, I can't remember. There's somewhere in that region anyway. I am going to back us to get a win. I think it's a good opportunity to try and get some momentum and confidence going in a competition where, we've had some success in this competition. It's not, we haven't had the success that Cardiff have had where they've won it twice, but we used to get to the knockout stages quite regularly, didn't we? And we have had a couple of semi-finals. We've had good memories. Gloucester, Stade Francais. So here's hoping that we can get back on track. So, fingers crossed for a Dragons win. So is there anything else then, Gav, before we wrap up tonight?
No, I think that covers it all.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your company, and thanks to Sam for joining us. Great to have him on. And thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week where hopefully we'll be talking about a Dragons win. Fingers crossed, because that would be nice, wouldn't it? That would be very, very nice.
I was just imagining it for a brief second. I was just imagining that final score.
After a very tough tour to South Africa and a tough first block URC, please, Dragons, stop making errors, be better, and give us long-suffering fans something to cheer. Thank you very much.
Totally agree.
Absolutely. Okay, take care. We'll speak next week. Goodbye.
Bye all.